Hello, welcome back to a second chance. My name is Philip Jones. We co-host Mr. Tafaro Cook and our special guest Albert Jones. Uh, Appreciate everybody being here today to listen to this wonderful story that we're going to get this evening. Real quick before we jump into this story, uh, a real small little story. I met Albert in 2018 at a Team SoCal meeting, and seeing how both our last name is Jones, we ended up sitting right next to each other during this meeting. So I remember I had to introduce myself first. Myself and my dad was there, and so Albert stands up and introduces himself and says, "My name is Albert Jones. No relation to them over here." And I'm like, "You don't even know me, brother. Like, how you know you don't want to be related to me, man? But, you know." But no, that was just the start of a great relationship, great friendship, and I appreciate this brother 100% for coming on today. So you all know that we get straight to it. So, Mr. Jones, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, fellas, for having me on the show. I'm a liver transplant recipient of 7 be 8 years in a couple of weeks, September 18th, 19th, from UCLA out here in Los Angeles. And basically, my story is that I was born in 1973 to go back to the origin, and I received a blood transfusion. I was born 2 months premature, and um, went on living life. And not until I was around, I guess, 14, 15, 16 years old, where I had an abnormal blood test, and it maybe been doing a physical for something, or I was feeling ill. Had a abnormal blood test, and the doctors told my mom and I that my liver numbers were off. So fast forward a little bit, they started running tests and doing all kind of probes and whatnot. Very uncomfortable for a teenager at the time. And later was determined, okay, I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis. Uh, very uncomfortable, unfortunate to deal with, loss of weight, going back to school, having stomach issues. A little while later, um, I was also diagnosed with PSC, which is primary sclerosing cholangitis, which is affects the bile ducts of the liver. And at the time, I guess this would be 1986, 1987. They said, well, typically there's no cure for this right now, but in 25 years or so, you might need a liver transplant or they'll have a cure for it. Well, I went on with life, be 15 years old, dealing with puberty and whatnot. And I, went to finish high school, went to college, graduated, became a police officer for a city in LA, not LA, but Inglewood specifically, and went on with my life. Later on, working with the federal government. By the time I was in my mid 20s, start having some minor, discomfort, itching, and whatnot, and saw my primary gastroenterologist. And he said, "Well, it's time to start looking at your liver numbers because they haven't improved, but they're not getting bad, worse. But just look at them." So I started seeing a liver specialist, and was on all kind of medicines and whatnot to try to slow down the process. And as I got older, it got a little worse. Uh, Not until I was about my mid 30s, 36, 37, was when my liver started to really fail. And, I started to have, jaundice and some more weight loss, and eventually had to be, go back and forth to UCLA for treatment until about September of 2013 when I kind of hit rock bottom. And, that's when I essentially passed out, and UCLA took it from there. I woke up uh, mid September with a new liver and a new life. But that first 2 weeks from September 1st to about the 18th, I was in and out of consciousness. I was in a coma. At the time, my wife and I had a 2-year-old son. He's 10 now. My wife Jessica, my son AJ, and So it was a lot of stress on them, I would imagine, and the family because having a toddler and me sick, after my son had dealt with his own health issues, which he's now clear of, thankfully. Um, I got a liver transplant. Um, After that, I started to kind of look into things. I saw some things for the transplant games. I think it was Houston at that time, but I wasn't well enough to go to Houston. So I finally found that they had them every 2 years, which would be Utah in 2018. That's where I met Phil, as he mentioned, and I participated in basketball and a few other events. And I didn't get a medal, but it was a fun environment to be in, considering that you know I was around people that who had transplants and would understand the dilemmas and daily issues that we deal with. Being transplant patients and transplant recipients. And that's it for now. I'm sure you fellas got some questions for me.
Mr. Cook, you got any questions?
Yeah, Phil, like, so you said you passed out and you woke up with a liver. Like, was that like an overnight thing, or was that like you
No,
said
it was
2 weeks?
like I remember. To be honest with you, September 1st of 2013 is the last day I remember. You
Okay,
know,
I got you. I
so
got you.
I went to sleep that night and didn't wake up. You know, so I essentially, according to my mom, my wife, and everybody, I didn't wake up till around mid-September, and that's when I had a new liver. Now, I was in and out of consciousness, on heavy medication and whatnot, and I was having those weird dreams that a lot of us have in those
Right.
situations, and I didn't know what was going on. So, I woke up and I was on dialysis. I had all kind of machines, and my arm was swollen. It was just I had lost probably 60 pounds. I went in. My typical weight is around 180. At that time, I was probably about 80 to 90 pounds. So I had
Mm,
lost half of my body weight along that time. Not during those 2 weeks, but just kind of you know slowly but surely led down to 80 pounds. So I
right.
woke up in recovery. With probably 12 to 15 lines in arms and neck, you know, catheters here and there. You guys know dialysis ports, etc.
Yeah.
And I was like, "What's going on?" Confused, dazed and confused, as they say. And they just kind of, I was trying to make an understanding of everything. And they told me I had a transplant. My wife did, and I'm like, "Okay, yeah, I knew I needed one, but." It was just kind of a big ball of confusion. It was like, oh
Right.
my God, where's my son? And then what's going on?
Right.
I had, picked up some other ailments in the hospital, MRSA, and et cetera, et cetera. So it was, I was just confused on why everybody was wearing masks. Of course, this is pre-COVID, so nobody was
Right.
really wearing masks. So I
Right.
guess
Right.
I
Right.
should be used to it now. But it was
Right.
people wearing masks, and you know, people would come see me and their eyes would be wide, like, oh, what happened? And, then they were trying to see me react to them. Then I'm like, what's wrong? Because I hadn't seen myself,
Right.
I'm laying in
Right.
the bed for 3 weeks, a month. So I ended up being in the hospital for 2 months, you know,
Mm.
September 1st, I got discharged November 1st, ironically, the first day of the Lakers season that day, because I was like, they don't have cable here. I got to get out of here.
Yeah, he got to watch the Lakers, man.
Yeah, I'm a Laker fan, so from Inglewood. So I was like, I got to get out of here now. I couldn't walk, because I had lost so much weight. I had to be wheelchaired, and even I had to do the little test around the hospital to see that I could even get up the 2 steps that led into my home.
Right.
Because like I said, my son was 2. My wife, she probably could have carried me. I mean, I was 85, 90 pounds, but I had to go back and forth in the house, and uh, you know, at that time, back and forth to UCLA, 2 or 3 times a week, go to
Yeah.
blood draw. I was on dialysis 3 times a week. So, it was a lot for her to be able to handle me and him at the time, because he like, hey, he all over the place. But,
Right.
it worked out where, I eventually got my strength back. I had the physical therapists coming to the house. They, got me stronger and stronger. And I eventually was using a walker, then just a cane, then I had my legs back under me, essentially.
Right. Right.
So it was a slow process, and my sights was set, like I said with Philip. Okay, I want to get myself right to be participating in the transplant games. And I know at that time I maybe had 2 years. So that's what we did. Worked hard, got back in the gym, picked my weight back up. And the most difficult part was getting my medication to the point where it wasn't upsetting my stomach. And as all of us know, that you go from taking 40, 50 pills a day, to being narrowed down to what's your specific recipe. And,
Right.
once they figured that out and I got off dialysis after 11 months, I was kind of, good to go.
Let me ask you something. Let's go back even a little farther. Like in high school, were you an athlete in high school, anything like that, or?
I mean, in my own mind, I was, but,
Okay.
but,
And the reason why I'm asking is like, do you like did you have any symptoms when you were in high school, like coming up, like energy wise, or you wasn't? Did you feel anything like?
but, that's a good question because you have to think about it. If I was born with, I had hepatitis B. So that I
Right.
got that from the blood from my transfusion at birth. So,
Right.
I don't know if that was something that was always there inside, the lethargy or whatever, but I always played sports and, I was actually in the band in high school, but
Okay.
I've
Yeah.
always played sports and, played basketball around the neighborhood and played little league baseball, all those things. Nothing that was I was like laying on the side, tired. Now I had a laid back personality, but I
Okay.
don't know if that was a cause of it. But no, nothing that was really specific to me not being able to participate in sports. More so because I had stomach issues. It was more of an embarrassing thing. Like, oh, today my stomach not right. So, I got to take it easy. I don't do nothing, having any embarrassing situation at school.
Right. Right.
But you in ninth, 10th, 11th grade, that's the last thing you want to do is, have some type of
Yeah.
situation like that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I get.
so I was in the band, for 3 years of high school, active in the church at the time because my dad was a pastor. So, I was always in the social environment. So it was
Hmm.
very, still trying to learn when to go someplace. And it was more difficult as a kid because my dad was like, no, we going to church. I'm like, dude, my stomach not right today. You know what I mean? So,
Right.
you know,
Right. Right.
that was
Let
the
me.
more difficult thing getting past him. And unfortunately, my stepmom, she was a nurse, so she kind of understood. Certain days man, my stomach not right. I'm not just trying to get out of school or
Yeah.
whatever. You know, so I
Right.
think it was around 10th grade. The end, I missed like the last month of school. Just that's when I really got diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, and it was flamed up, and everything I ate, it would come up, come down,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
like, I cannot go to school like this. And my dad, nah, 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 So they finally convinced her, that convinced him that I could stay home for like a month and a half, whatever, till it settled down. Prednisone, all these crazy medications,
Hmm.
just to get
Yeah.
it under control. And I
Right.
was having issues with my joints swelling up. My leg would swell up, my feet, my kneecaps. It was just bad. I almost felt like the Elephant Man. Like here I am,
Yeah.
15, 16 years old, and I'll go out for the day. Like we would go to amusement park, for example, Magic Mountain, and my leg would swell up. By the end of the day, I could barely walk, or something crazy like that. And I'm like, what is going on? But thankfully, I made it through all that, and it just helped me kind of deal with a lot of stuff because I'm like, if I dealt with that as a kid, and teenager,
Right.
there's not much that I can't handle now.
When you were an officer, did you have like, I mean, and this is when you were a little bit older in your 20s and 30s, could you tell anything was going on with you then? I know you said you saw it then, but did you see it progress, like getting worse, or what
Not
was the
really.
feeling?
I was fortunate and blessed. So I went through the academy and I worked for the police department from 92 to 97.
Okay.
So from the time I was 19 to the time I was 24.
Okay.
So I was fortunate that everything was under control at that time, via medication.
Okay.
Now when I had my physical for the police department, of course they did the whole workup, and it's the second time I've had a workup since I was 15. And hey, your liver numbers are off. What's going on? Okay, I had to go to my primary doctor and my gastroenterologist and say, am I capable of finishing the police academy? Am I physically fit to complete it? They're like, yeah, of course, yeah, you fine. So they signed off on everything. Academy came, hey, no problems. I went through everything, didn't have any limitations. Again, I'm 22 years old, 23, and I think more so being young helped me more than being sick. Now, if it was
Yeah.
now or I'm 48, I'd probably be like, hey, I'm sick, I can't do it,
Right.
but
Right.
at
Right.
that time, youth prevailed.
Yes. Yes. Go ahead, Phil. Go ahead, Phil.
No, I was gonna kind of go back a little bit, back to your childhood. So, like, you were talking about the stomach issues and things like that you were having, in high school time. Were you, I guess you could say, open about your situation at that time, like to friends and stuff like that? Like, how was, kind of going back to that social life part? Like, how was that kind of explained? Like, because we can't, sometimes when you have those issues, you can't control it.
Right,
So you
right,
like, hey
right.
man, I got to run the restaurant. Like, man, and you
Oh
come
no,
back and they're like, hey,
yeah, yeah.
why you got to run the bathroom like that? Like, and then you got to kind of explain, at least what you want to explain. Like, was that something easy for you to do, or did you have to do it at all?
Of course not. No, of course not. It was difficult, and I my friends and still to this day are clowns. We clown each other. So the last thing you want to do is be on the butt end of the joke about using the bathroom on yourself or running to the bathroom, and
Right.
what high school bathroom is clean enough to go do what we need to do. You know what I
Right,
mean? I
right,
was telling my wife last week. I said the only person that saw a clean bathroom was the first person in there in the morning. Everybody after him for the school end of the school day was horrible. So somebody like myself, you don't have an advocate there. You can't go to the talk to the nurse and say, let me come in here every morning before school, or let me if I have a emergency, can I run in here? Because they were like, boy, get out of here. You ain't in
right,
here,
right, right.
that kind of situation. So it was never a situation that I discussed it with any of my friends. Now to this day, I think even within the last year, I told some of my friends what happened that day that I missed school and I came back, in different clothes. And that's the crazy part. I had to come back to school. But the one day I had an accident, um, my pops was like, "All right, go take a shower and come back home." I'm like, "Go back to school." I'm like, "What? Can I just miss today?" No, you got to go back.
You
God
had a
bless his
dad like
soul,
me.
but
You had a
it
dad
was
like mine, man. That's how
yeah, he
my
was
dad
cold
was.
blooded, man. And the bad part about it is, I'll go over the story. I mean, it's 30 years later now, but it was like, okay, I was in class and I felt the rumblings coming. I like, oh, I went to the teacher like, hey, I got to go to the bathroom. He saw my face and know that I wasn't a student that got to goof around, so he said, "Go, go." I'm running to the bathroom. Damn, don't make it. So I'm like, all right. I like get back to the class on a discreet, and I had on white sweatpants. I never wear white to this day for
Oh,
some reason. I had a white Adidas sweats. So
Uh,
I'm like running back to. I'm trying to go to the bathroom and try to clean up myself at least the best I can. Worst thing happened. The bell ring. Ah, no. Now everybody coming
oh,
in and
everybody
out.
out of class.
Yeah. So I'm like, I'm in the stall, and I'm glad to get this off my chest after 30 years. Some people know it. I'm in the stall trying to clean myself. The bathroom a mess. I'm getting sick looking at the bathroom. Somebody in the bathroom like, oh, what's that going? All this kind of stuff. So I wait till the bell ring for the,
yeah.
people go back in class. So I go back to my class where my teacher was, Mr. Olson, bless his soul. He was like, he saw the look on my face again, like, didn't make it, huh? He said, all right, just go to the office. So I get my stuff, go to the office. Now I got to go to the attendance office. So at my school, they had the almost like the cafeteria where you had the pull down screens for the attendance office. So if you're late, they'll give you like a pass or something. So I'm like, cool, I can just get my pass and roll to the house. The lady gonna call my parents, etc. So I'm like, ma'am, I had an accident, blah blah blah. Can you call my parents to let me come home? She's like, boy, get in this office. Close the window on me. I'm like, come on now, I'm knocking. She like, no, go around. I go in the office, and there's probably 25 students in there. So I got to go from the door all the way to the desk and talk to this woman that slammed the door on me. So, I got stuff streaking, I got my jacket around my waist. I'm like, come on. So as soon as I walk in there, they're like, oh my God, what is that? Blah, blah, blah. You know, man, God, this is
Man.
Eaglewood 1988, 89.
Oh man.
They like, God dang, why. So I'm like, the one that get clowned is now being clowned. So I'll go up there and the day they're like, okay, she called my pops. What? He did what? He's sick, boy. Tell him to walk home. She gave me a pass. All right, walk home. I'm like, come on, bruh. Come pick me up. No, you gotta walk home. So I leave school. I walk out of the office. So I'm like, cool. I won't see nobody. Everybody in class. That particular day, my class that I was supposed to be in is going to the library for something. So
Oh
I'm
my
standing there
God.
getting ready to walk out the gate, and all my class and my partners is passing by me. So I get up against the wall, like, "Hey, what you doing, man? Where you going? Why you not in class?" And the teacher like, "Boy, what are you out of class?" So I say, "I gotta go home. I had an accident. I sat on something. Blah blah blah." All right. Oh, okay. I hope you feel better. All right. So I lived the school was on 104th in Yukon. I lived on 112th in Yukon. So I'm rolling down, and Philip know where it is because that's right by his house. So I'm rolling down Yukon, trying to walk fast, but I got a situation going on. So all of a sudden, people start honking. You nasty blah, this. I'm like, oh, come on, man. Why today? Why? So I'm just hanging my head in shame. I'm rolling home, and I finally walk up in my driveway. And fortunately, my stepmom, she looked out for me. She said, "Hey, I understand. I got the washing machine ready. Just go in there and pull stuff off, throw it in there, and get yourself together." All right, cool. I go in there, get showered up, lay in the bed, just to kind of gather myself for a few minutes. Okay, pops come home, like, "Hey, you got sick? Yeah, man, I'm not feeling good." Well, I don't know what you laying around here for. You get on dress and going back up to school. I'm gonna drop you off. I'm like, bruh, come
Like, wait a
on.
minute. I'd have been like, you could drop me off, but you couldn't pick me up.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, you could have picked me up. Go get dressed. So I'm sitting
Uh,
there like, I really want to fight this man. Really today. So
oh
I change
man.
clothes and I get back to school. He dropped me off. So right now it's about lunchtime. So all my partners was like, "Hey man, where were you been?" I said, "Man, something happened, man. I had to go home." And we just hanging out. All of a sudden, somebody like, "Hey, didn't you have on white sweats?"
They would not leave it alone, man. I know
Oh,
how it
they
is
would
in
leave it
high
alone. I
school,
said,
man.
"Man, I sat on something, man, blah, 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 and this, that, and the other." So that kind of much it was done for after that. I never had any more issues at school. But that was like the most embarrassing situation I dealt
I
with.
can only
And,
imagine.
it's kind of like, this stuff is for real, and I understand now, now having it for 35 years or 33 years, it's like, you kind of can feel when it's acting up, and unfortunately I'm not on any specific medication for that because most of the transplant medication is helping kind of stave that off, according to
That's
my
good.
gastro.
What's crazy about that is I'm a two-time kidney transplant recipient, and I was over medicated with Cellset, man.
Yeah.
And I had my own fitness studio at the time, and my doctors, sometimes the doctors, when they got your stuff leveled out and everything is right, they don't want to change it. And I
Right.
was losing weight like crazy. I couldn't keep nothing down. And every time I ate, I was running to the restroom. And I was like,
Hmm.
and I called my doctors up and I was like, look, something's not right with this medication. And they was like, well, we don't, they had me come in, but they was, refusing to change it.
Right.
They're like, your levels are good. We don't want to change it. I'm like, look, I can't keep no food down or nothing. And it took 3 months for them to slash my self step in half. And after that, the challenge of the stomach and everything stopped.
Right.
And
Right.
yeah, that's all it took. And my level stayed the same. But I got that, man. It went on for like almost a year before they would
Hmm.
change it, man. And it was rough. Every time I would go out to eat, I was like concerned, like where's the restroom at? Where's
Right,
you
right,
know
right,
that
right.
you had to
Yeah.
strategically, like, man, I don't know if I can eat here, man. I don't know if I can, because you knew what was going to happen.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I had a slight little case of it, so I can only imagine, especially in
Yeah.
the
So
height.
imagine,
Ooh,
yeah,
yeah,
imagine
yeah,
that as a kid and living your whole teenage years like that. And
yeah,
thank God that it didn't happen. I mean, it happened other times, but it's just not. That was the most embarrassing because it's like, damn, I'm at school,
right,
But
right, right.
you're right about the doctor's hesitancy in changing your meds because I was dealing with that recently with lisinopril for the kidneys, and the high blood pressure,
Hmm.
and that was making me cough, bro. My doctor gave that to me last year. I'm like, bro, how you gonna give me something that make you cough in the middle of COVID? I mean,
Right.
everywhere I go, I'm coughing and people looking at me like, what's going on? I'm in the middle of the night, I'm coughing. My wife concerned, my son, like, you all right? I'm like, come on. So I mean, literally, 2 months ago, I finally like, dude, I can't take it no more. You got to take me off of it. So he changed, and within, after I weaned off of it for about 2 weeks, I'm back to normal. I'm like, y'all gotta listen to us, man. We the ones living in these
Exactly.
situations. You can't. Everybody's different, and everybody's
Yeah.
recipe of medication is different.
Right. Right. Exactly right.
Oh, well, I know we got some more questions, but I'm gonna go ahead and take a commercial real quick. We'll be right back. Welcome back to a second chance. Jumping right back into these questions. Albert, real quick, if you don't mind elaborating on this, something that has a lot to do with you and at the same time has nothing to do with you, but you had mentioned AJ's situation earlier in the show. Would you mind elaborating on that? Exactly what he had to go through some years ago?
Yeah, yeah. Our son AJ, he is currently 10 years old, and we adopted him from Chicago in 2011. He was born in March 26th, and it was discovered shortly after birth that he wasn't his intestines weren't producing correctly, pushing, poop out. To be honest with you, so Lord, Lord, forgive me, I can't remember the name of it. My wife won't come in here and tell me the name of it. But he was diagnosed with Hirschsprung's disease. He was diagnosed with Hirschsprung's, which means that the bottom of your where your poop comes out, it doesn't work. So they had to literally fish it out there until we could come back to LA. So we found a specialist here in LA at Children's Hospital, and they one of the experts in this state, actually on the West Coast, and they he had about 3 or 4 procedures when he was between 3 months old all the way up to about a year and a half, where they had to rebuild his some of his insides and take out the bad part and lower it down, and also put some was it that when they put in there for wrinkles,
Botox.
what Botox, they had to put Botox in there, and and it worked out. We were blessed enough where after 4 or 5 procedures, um, he's been good. Now he had a bloated stomach, and it kind of it's crazy how things worked out. His stomach was bloated for a lot of time. He would get gas, and he couldn't even poop right. To be frank with you, he because everything was so tight. Um, and it would only relax when he would go to bed at night and be laying on his stomach, and it was like a cannon going off in there, in the crib or in the bedroom, because his body was relaxed. He wake up with a flat stomach by the midday, he puffy again. Now he's now he's a little more regulated, but when he started walking, he had all this fluid and gas built up that he would walk, and it was almost like a weeble wobble, and he would walk. So once he got old enough to regulate and everything started functioning right, now he didn't have that weight on him. So now when he walked, he running everywhere. He running on his tippy toes, he running. And Philip can tell you that once he got into sports, it was like this dude was like a lightning bolt, because now he don't have that weight on him, so he's probably one of the fastest 10-year-olds you would ever want to see, because now he's been blessed enough that, and I always tell him that, out of something that was tragic and something that we didn't know would happen, now a blessing came out of it, because now for 10 years old, you fast as heck, you running, they even called him high octane in one of his leagues that he was in, because he would just get the ball and just go, So, and that was kind of, little did we know that his last flare up was just before I got sick. So my wife, bless her heart, she went from taking care of him and me getting sick to me getting sick and he's better. You know what I mean? And it was almost like she went from one thing right to the other. And this all while she was going to school to become a teacher. And I'm in her classroom right now. You can see the background back there, but it was kind of like that, and obviously we've had help along the way, family and friends and moms and uncles and aunties and church members, who helped all along the way, and I don't want to name everybody to miss out on anybody, but, we've been blessed that, when I was in the hospital and somebody needed to take care of a 2-year-old, they would come pick them up and keep them for 2 or 3 days till I got, Jess could get her feet together. Somebody would take the dog at the time and keep the dog for 6 months or whatever, So we had a lot of blessings on the way. And my wife sent me a text, wanted to remind me that I did have a partial liver when I had my transplant. Now I was so sick, like I said, I was so ill that they said no, I needed a full liver. You can't take nothing else. But interesting enough, the day that they found the liver for me, um, my wife was down there in the waiting room, and she noticed that a family was down there with a stroller that was empty. And they, I think it was a Hispanic family, and my wife said, "Hey, where's the baby?" And they said, and that from mixed English, she got that this baby was a 1 year old that was waiting a liver transplant as well. You know, so a short time later, the doctors came down and said, "Hey, we found a liver for Albert, but do you mind if we take a lobe and put it into use it for this baby, 1 year old baby, which happened to be this family's baby?" So she said, "Of course, but I thought y'all said he wouldn't, survive. He needed the whole thing." They said, "No, we're going to do our best to help both of them." So that's what they did. So they
Okay.
took 1/3 of the liver I got and placed it in her, and I got the other 2/3. And if everything worked out correctly, she should be, I guess, 8 years old now, 8 or 9 years old. You know, So I think that sometimes when they say they can't do something and they get pressed up against the wall, they got to try it. And I'm thankfully for me and hopefully for her that it worked out that way.
That's awesome, man. Because we all know that livers do regenerate. So,
Right,
but yeah, man, that's a story in itself right there. That's
right,
that's
right,
big,
right.
man.
Yeah.
Them to come, save two lives at one time. That's pretty big.
Hmm.
Do you? There's the question I have for you is how often do you have to get your labs drawn now with the liver?
I'm at 3 months now.
Okay, every 3 months. Okay,
Yeah. So,
okay,
it depends on what's going on. Like I said, with me changing the medicine last month, of course, right after you make a medication change, they're like, all right, go
right,
in 2 weeks, go to the labs, make sure everything is
right,
stable. So,
right.
I did go twice the last time just because of the medication change, but typically it's every 3 months, which I'm due for soon.
Right. Do you have any restrictions? Have they given you any restrictions to do anything like far as nutrition, exercise, anything like that?
No,
That's good.
Philip would tell you I wouldn't say avid, but I'm a mountain biker. I go, once or twice a week. I ride mountain bikes. I haven't got back into the basketball gym just because I haven't found one. We just moved in a new location, so I haven't been back to the gym. But I jump rope, I do trampoline, ride bikes. No restrictions. After the first few years, and nothing really per diet besides the stuff that we can't have with our medication. Pomegranate and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
What's so amazing is to see where you came from and how you bounced back to doing everything you like to do. I can tell you about one of my little challenges. My peritoneal sac burst on my side, and I had to stay in the hospital close to septic. I went down from 235 to like 180 pounds, man. I was,
Wow.
and that's funny, like you said. I was kind of in and out of it at the time, and I never forget. My friends came to see me from the hospital, and I really didn't see myself. And I've seen them looking at me, but I'm just happy to see them because I just came out of it. And when I get back, I was learning how to walk and everything again. And my one boy, my best friend, he was like, "Man, I ain't gonna lie, man." He said, "When I left that hospital, I sat in the car and cried because I never see you
Right.
be so
Right.
weak."
Right.
And I'm thinking like, I was like, he was like, "Man, you look like you was, a shell of yourself." And that's what brought me back to what you said, when people looking
Hmm.
at you like, "Wow." And then to see, you being, "Hey, I'm riding, mountain bikes. I'm doing this. I'm doing that." It's amazing how we bounce back, man. That's one
Right.
thing I just want to
Right.
say, and just be so thankful and so blessed that we are, that can
Yeah,
bounce
and
back
I
from
and
these
I
things.
have a similar story like that. One of my coworkers came to see me. He was kind of the representative for the office, and kind of check on me, just to see how I was doing. So this particular day, he had been coming, and I was in and out of consciousness. But this day, I happened to be conscious, and he came into the room, and he stood at the end of the bed. And he started crying, and I'm like, what the hell wrong with you? So he
Right.
opened his eyes like, oh man, you awake, man, man. Ow. He came over there and dapping me up. I'm like, hey man, what's going on? He said, man, I'm glad you're talking, man. I thought, he was just speechless. You know what I'm saying? So,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and then I didn't realize it. So a short while later, maybe a month and a half into my stay, and the nurse was like, "You want to go outside?" And I'm like, "Yes, please. I've been in here for a month and a half. Yes, please. Let me go outside." So I get my old frail body up, and I get into the wheelchair, and she backs me into the elevator, and the elevator door is closed, and they happen to be mirrored, and I'm looking at myself. I said, "Who in the hell is that?"
Right. Right.
Because I had a full beard, gray beard. I had hair, which I hadn't had in a long time because of the medicine I was on. And I'm looking at myself, and I'm like, "Oh my God, I look like a zombie," you know. And so I'm going outside, and I sit in the sun, and I get a little vitamin D, and I go back up to the room, and I'm like, I'm petrified because I'm like, oh my God, I got to get myself together. So I called my nephew. I said, when you come, please bring some clippers and cut my hair. Give me a little shape up or something, man. I got to, I'm in here looking all raggedy.
Right.
I feel better. I know I was looking dead, but I got to, at least let my appearance speak for itself. So he came and he did that, and typically because I was on so much prednisone, I'm crying at everything. I'm crying. He cut my hair. I'm crying at commercials. My son and wife come, I'm crying. My mama come, I'm crying. It's just like, I was just so emotional because the medication had me so overwhelmed that, I just didn't know what to do. And I'm like, I don't know what's going on. And people that typically know me like, dude, it's the medicine, man, because you're not like this. I said, I don't like it. I don't like crying just because of somebody showing up, but that's just
Right.
how it was. It
Right.
was just an emotional roller coaster, and basically trying to figure out what happened over the last month and a half, 2 months. And I was really trying to be strong. Like I said, I got a 2 year old son. So one day they're like, all right, we're gonna try to get you to walking. I had a physical therapist named Christy, and she was fantastic, little old woman, but she would throw me around with that little strap, like like I weighed 20 pounds. But she would say, all right, we're gonna walk up to the hallway and then just walk to this line. So I saw that my son was watching. I said, okay, I'm gonna just push it, and I'll go all the way down to the end. I'll be tired, be struggling, but I'm like, I got to show my boy that, despite the circumstances, and I got it on video still that, it pops up every now and again. I'm like, it was difficult. Here I am, legs look like bones, you know, I don't have no booty, it was just a mess, but, I got up and walked and didn't give up. So I always, appreciated my internal fatherhood wanting to push me through that
Right.
moment. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? And I think
Right.
about that all the time. When I was down and out, I figured, yeah, if I happen to pass away, yeah, my wife would understand. She'll be hurt. My mom, yeah, they'll be hurt. But who would explain to my 2 year old what kind of dad I was? Because right now he doesn't understand. And
Right.
and to be honest with you, my parents divorced when I was 2. And
Mm.
I don't remember nothing, about us being together. You know what I'm saying? Now there's a few
Mm.
pictures here and there, but all of us in the same house, I don't remember. So that stuff with me, like my 2 year old won't remember me, and I don't want my friends and my mom and my wife telling him about me in the past tense. You know what
Right.
I'm saying? So
Right.
now that he got some 8 extra years, he gonna know everything about me.
And I think honestly, man, I think that gives you will to live too.
Correct.
That
Correct.
when you got things to live for. I can even vouch for that, man. I did close to almost 12 years of dialysis, so I had something to live for. You'd be like, man, my will to live. But I
Hmm.
remember them getting me up walking. And when you come back to your room, you are wore out like you'd have played a football game. And I
Right.
played college
Right.
ball, but you'd be so tired because you ain't got no muscle and everything. You'd be tired and like, whoa, man, this is a lot to do.
Right. Right. And I have a story that it was when I was out. or in between wherever, I would have a recurring dream that I'll never forget. It was I was in the bed, and my son, at the age he was at the time, was walking away with somebody holding somebody's hand. It seemed like a male, bald headed male. And he would always look back in my dream and say, "Dad, don't leave me. Dad, don't leave me." And I'll be trying to crawl. Like I said, I couldn't walk, so I'll be trying to crawl to him and get to him. And I would always wake myself up every time. I mean, I would have this dream, seem like daily. I don't know if it was on a loop or what. And and I figured, I said, I guess God is telling me that somebody gonna take care of my son. I figured it was my brother-in-law who's bald headed, or one of his other uncles who's bald headed, because the person didn't have hair. I said, this is crazy. I don't like it, but I can never reach to him. So I would explain that dream to my wife, and she like, it's probably telling you something. So fast forward a few years, about 6 months later, after I got out, we were doing a podcast with one of our friends, and we were going to Hollywood. And also in this dream, it was like a green forest around us with a waterfall. So I don't know where we were. So fast forward to we did this podcast, and we ended up so me and AJ were walking to the car, and my wife stayed back and talked to the host for a little while. So he had my hand held, and Jessica, my wife, came behind me, and she didn't scream, but she said, "Hey, stop and look." So I stopped. I said, "What are you talking about?" She said, "This is your dream right here." So I looked around, and I looked back at her. My son looked back at her, and I looked in this hallway we were walking down, and it was painted green like a forest. And right where we were standing was like one of them fountains that they would have in the lobby, And she's like, "That was you the whole time in that dream that you saw." You know what I'm saying?
Man,
she said, "That was
that's
you.
awesome.
He was just telling you that you have to get to that point." You know what I'm saying? So I was like, "Wow, this is crazy." I said,
yeah, man.
so that always, every time I tell that, I get goosebumps, because I'm like, sometimes you see things from one angle and you like, man, this sucks. But once you get on the other side of it, it's like, oh, okay, we good. That was me. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
that dream was your push to keep fighting.
Yeah.
Right.
It was to show you that as long as you keep fighting, you'll always be with your son. Him saying, "Don't leave me," was that fuel to get you to keep fighting, to get to that point to where, like you said, you don't want your son to be, told stories about you. You want to be able to tell them stories that you've, been in, and to be able to guide him to become the man, which is, definitely what he's on his way to be, man. AJ is energetic for sure, like you said, man. But he's a great kid, so definitely my hat goes off to you in your fight. To be able to take care of your kids, have to go through what he had to go through, and then go through your own circumstances at the same time, right after that, consecutively, man, is admirable. So.
Right. Yeah, I was good on hospitals after that for a good minute, man. I'm like, Children's, I love y'all. UCLA, I love y'all, but I am cool, because especially now in this environment, it's like, hey, if I don't have to go nowhere near a hospital, I'm perfectly fine.
Right.
And as you guys know, a lot of us that have dealt with transplant, it's people ask you every time, "How do you feel?" Like, hey, I might have a bad knee or a toe that hurt, but I got to keep pushing, because I know when something is bad, and it's not as bad as it could be. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's just something daily when you get up, like, oh dang, my ankle's sore today, but hey, I got to keep striving. Especially us that have kids, or brothers and sisters, or wherever, somebody watching us, because they always concerned, like, "You all right? Everything fine?" Yeah, I'm cool.
Right.
I might have the bubble guts, but that's normal.
Right. That's just an adult thing right there.
That's just an adult thing, shoot.
So I want to touch on a real small story. So before I go to someone ask you this question, when you had your transplant, did they tell you were going to have a catheter?
You talking to me?
Yeah.
Okay.
You talking to me?
Tafaro, yeah.
Yeah, I had a catheter for a month, man, after the transplant. What's crazy?
No, did they tell you that you were going to have one?
Yeah, they told me, because Well, I'll just tell you a little brief. So I didn't, on dialysis, I didn't urinate, man, for 12 months. So my bladder atrophied to a walnut, like a almond size, like a walnut
Oh,
size. And so they had me on the gurney doing my transplant, and the doctor told me he had me on there 6 more hours because they couldn't find my bladder. They're trying to hook my bladder up and couldn't find it. So they had to put a stent in. They said they kept on
Right.
going past it, and they find this little small little thing, and they go, "That's his bladder, just atrophied so small." So they had to put a stent in it, and then I had to wear a catheter for a whole month afterwards. And so I wake up with a catheter. So yeah, and I had
Yeah,
to
they
wear it.
didn't tell me either, and that's why my story is crazy as hell. Because I remember when I woke up, I'm like, looking around, you still kind of dazed from medicine, and and I'm like, I gotta go to the bathroom, and I'm like, even though I know I just had this transplant, I've always been this way to be self moving. So even when I'm in a hospital, I'm connected to stuff, and the nurses are like, just use the bathroom. I'm like, nah, I'm gonna go to the bathroom. Cool. I was still like, I wanted to sit up to go to the bathroom. I couldn't sit up because my stomach hurt like hell, from the incision and stuff. And then I'm like, man, I gotta go to the bathroom. No. So I hit the button. I'm like, look, I gotta go to the bathroom, but I can't move. And she's like, what you moving for? I'm like, so I can go to the bathroom. She's like, you got a catheter in. You ever notice that scene in any movie where the dude just like throws his cover off and looks at himself like, what the? That's
yeah,
what
Yeah,
happened.
yeah,
Because I'm
yeah.
like, I got to what? Because they didn't tell me. I'm okay if you tell me ahead of time, right? Because I know
They can't
that,
tell you though. They can't tell you.
yeah. You were not in a position to understand no way.
They can't tell you
They gonna
anything,
tell your
man.
mama or your wife or whoever
no,
They
they
you
just
need
know.
gonna
to be,
do
they need to tell me. Because if I'd have tried to get up out the bed and actually could have moved, I'd have been in trouble. Because I'd have knocked over pee and everything else getting out the bed because I didn't know it was there. And I'm like, so exactly how do I use this?
The
Well,
first
yeah,
time getting up from a transplant out of that bed is the craziest thing ever. For one, you got your stomach muscles are like
tight.
done with because they didn't cut you,
Right.
and you got a
And
gown on,
sewed
but
it
you
back
got this,
together.
Yeah.
you got a bag on your leg, and you're trying to get
Hey,
to,
hey, you
and
worried? Hey, you worried about your booty being out? You know, you're like, man, my butt out. You know,
Hey, that was probably
you
the
like,
main thing I was worried about was that. And but you know what? Like, how long did you guys take to get out of
transplant
bed
story.
after transplant?
Well, I'll tell you the truth, after my transplant, man, I walked that night and they were happy. They were like, dude, man, honestly, my first transplant, Albert, I was a football player, so I was a big dude. I was 245 when I got my first transplant. And I had squatted 500 pounds the day before my transplant. So
oh
I was,
wow,
yeah, I was a strong dude. So, man, my first transplant, I mean my second transplant, I walked that night, man. I got out of bed and walked that night. So yeah,
They didn't tell me I had to walk till day 4. I was
really,
laying in the
okay,
bed. They took the catheter out and everything, and the drain tube for the blood and everything. Took that out. All that stuff was out by the time when I started walking. Because they decided to out of nowhere come in and say, "Hey, you can't go home till you start walking, right?" And I'm like, "You
yeah,
tell me this now?" I'm like, "You should have told me this as soon as you saw my eyes open. I probably would have got up right then and started walking or something, or tried to. I probably would have fell over, but I'm like, man, you know what? I got out the bed, and after they took all this stuff out, and because the stent stays in till like a week or two after, uh, unless like I know you said you had yours for a month after transplant.
yeah, month.
I only had
I went back.
mine
Yeah, month.
for like maybe like 2 or 3 days, and then they
Mm.
were like, "Oh yeah, you good? We about to take this out," and that was probably next to that stent coming out was probably the one of the worst feelings ever
Oh.
for them to have to pull a tube out your joint. Like what?
well,
And it's not like something that you because here's my doctors are crazy for some
They
reason. I
tell you
always
to
get the
breathe.
crazy.
They tell you to breathe. That's what they do.
Right,
They tell you
right.
to
They take a
breathe.
deep breath, and I
Breathe.
want you to push out as I'm put. I'm like what?
It's the
And
craziest
but
feeling ever, man.
I always get the crazy doctors, right? And they're crazy but smart. And I think they do it most of the time just to get a laugh. And I asked him, I said, wait a minute. I said, let's wait for a second. Is it okay if I pull it out? Now, at this time, I'm not thinking that it's in there as much as it's in there.
Oh,
So
it's
I'm
in
like
there,
trying to
man.
pull and it ain't moving.
It's in there.
It's not budging, right? And he's looking at me, goes, can I give it a try now? And I'm like, yeah, man, go ahead. So he's like, all right, when you take three, 4 deep breaths in and out. And on the last one, I want you to inhale and hold it. He said, when I start pulling, you start blowing your air out real slow. Unfortunately, I don't know the technique for this. So he was only about 75% out, and I was out of air. And I'm like, oh my God, this is not working for me. And he's like, gotta keep pulling. I'm like, all right, well, I probably won't pee for about 3 days. If I do, it's gonna be some blood somewhere. So, get ready for this scream that's gonna happen when I go and blood comes out. He's like, no, that's normal.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah. As
Yeah.
bad as this felt, I don't think, the amount of blood that may come out is gonna be normal. But it's crazy. Did you have to deal with that, Albert? I know kidney, people.
Everybody does.
Yeah.
Oh,
Everybody.
okay.
Everybody.
I've
I
never
was
heard
just
that from anybody else though. So
yeah,
I've
no,
only
no,
heard it
my
from kidney patients because that's what our
no,
kidneys
we
do
my
is
wife just texted me. She reminded me that I like you, they didn't ask me nothing because I was out anyway. So they probably told her, but I pulled it out myself. I was so confused that I pulled it out. I was pulling out lines. I was pulling out everything because I woke up like, what is all this crap? I was going crazy.
Yeah.
So they restrained me after that. So they did everything they had to do with my arms tied, and even though I was 85, 90 pounds, I couldn't blow a lint brush. But I was trying to fight everybody and being disruptive. So they tied me down. But like you mentioned, Brother Cook, when they tried to get me to walk, and it wasn't even a walk. They said, "Well, we're gonna have you sit up in this chair next to the bed." I'm like, "Oh, that ain't nothing," So they swung that.
okay.
I swung that sheet back, and they said, "Take your time." I'm like you. Yeah, I'm semi in good shape. I do all this, I do that. So I moved that right leg like 1 inch, and I'm like, ah, like yikes.
Right.
She's like, all right,
Right.
take your time. So she helped me, and it took about an hour and 15 minutes for
Literally.
me to get in that
Literally.
chair
Yes.
and sit down, and I'm sitting there covered in sweat. I'm like,
Yep.
this is ridiculous. She's like, all right, you can sit here for about 10 minutes, and then we're gonna put you back in the bed. And I'm like, no, can I just sleep right?
Right. I don't want to move.
I
I'm
don't want
telling
to
you, the
move no
hardest
more.
thing, right? The
Yeah,
hardest thing after a transplant is just
right,
getting into a regular chair. People don't know. I mean, it's because you got to hold yourself up. For one,
yep,
you're weak as I
yep.
don't know what, man, and it's painful. It's the most awkward, and then your stomach muscles are all cut up because
Oh,
you use your core all the
right,
time just to get up.
right.
We take it for granted, but
Right.
and when you sit down somewhere you don't want to move, and they be like, "Okay, we got to put you back in the bed." You be like, "Oh," and you thinking strategically, "How am I going to do this?" I
Yeah,
got this
yeah,
bag on me. Also, I got the IV lines attached to me and everything. You might have an IV even coming out of here. I did,
yeah,
So
yeah.
Yeah, I
yeah,
did
I
too.
got the marks. I have
Yep.
two on each
I
side.
get
Yep.
yeah,
both
yeah.
Yeah.
sides.
So
Hmm.
right, right. So I mean, these are what I call the transplant stories, the
Right.
intricate things that people don't know. Like the catheters, all these things that people don't know. Even like the first time eating something, you're like, man, I can. You really don't have an appetite as much. Sometimes
Right.
Right.
all
Right.
these things happen, man.
And
And then it's
your throat is sore. Yeah.
your
All I did
throat
was drink
is,
juice. I drank
man.
juice for like 3 days. That was it.
But Albert, like you said, I drank a lot of water. I tried to, but your throat is so sore. It's literally raw. It's literally
Right.
raw
Right.
Mhm.
from them.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I remember they had I don't know if it was a throat specialist, but a swallow. Some you had to do a swallow test where
Yes.
before you could, you know
Hmm.
what
Yes.
I'm saying, before you go
Yes.
from liquid to that, and you're like, what? I've been eating for 37 years. But they give you a little something like even applesauce. You're like, God, what is this razor blade?
It's
You're
just
like,
like
oh my goodness. You're like, wow. You're
yeah,
like,
yeah, it's
oh
like
yeah,
that,
maybe I'll
man.
drink some more water or some more juice, but yeah, that hurt. And they're
Right.
like, okay, yeah, we're gonna slowly start you back, building up to that.
Oh
I
yeah, you
mean,
have to go
even
fluids
oh yeah,
to soft
yeah,
stuff to
yeah.
regular food, and I'm like, look here. I'm like, if you don't give me something to eat, I'm a fat person. I was born on Thanksgiving. I've always been an eater. So I'm like, if you don't give me some, I don't want applesauce. Like, I need something to eat. And they're like, well, we need to make sure that this stuff is gonna go down first, before we move you to the next thing. I'm like, look, give me something to eat. Like, I don't. It's either give me something to eat or let me go home and
Another
hurt
another
and take something
challenge.
to eat.
Another challenge is your first bowel movement. I'm telling you, because like I said, you naturally push a little bit. I'm not saying you push hard, but your core again, it's it's
Yeah.
Right.
it's all bandaged up. I had staples in me, and so you're
Mm-hmm.
like and you're trying to do this, and then you got a catheter on too. It's the most.
Oh yeah,
I'm telling you, man,
it's no joke because like you said,
no joke.
you want to go to the commode and you got all these lines in you and bags
Right,
and,
right,
and ports and they saying don't push too hard because you're gonna push something else out or bust the staple. So you're like,
right,
okay, I don't
right.
know what to do. You're
They
like,
gave
help
me a
me out.
pillow.
I had a pillow too. I used to keep the pillow right here, especially if you
Hmm.
watching TV a little bit something funny. You keep the pillow there because
Oh
it
wait,
hurts too
bro.
bad to laugh. The
I
laugh
had
would just
listen,
kill you.
man. My stepdad, man. Like how my parents got divorced when I was two. Also, and my mom and my stepdad came to see me when I was in the hospital when I had my transplant. And my stepdad is a 100% joker. He can't go a, at least 10 minutes without saying it. He got something has to have a joke in it. And I'm sitting there and I'm talking to him and stuff. And of course, here come the jokes. And I can't do nothing but laugh. And I'm like, bruh, I'm like, I'm hurting right now. And he could do nothing but laugh because it was funny to him. I mean, it was funny to me too, because I'm like, I want to laugh, but I can't because my stomach hurts so goddamn much. And you over here cracking jokes like it's comic view. And my mom's sitting there dying. I'm like, why are y'all laughing at me right now? Like, this is pain. This is not funny. This hurts. Like
Right,
what?
right.
Like those when I gotta have those family members stay at home. Like, don't come see me. Like, call me on video call or something, and then I'll see you when I get out. But I can't
Well,
be
you
talking to
probably
y'all.
you probably needed that though. You probably needed
I
that.
did.
Yeah,
I
exactly,
did.
exactly.
It let me know that I didn't feel as down as I thought I did at one point. I mean, I was happy because I had the procedure, but then I was kind of down because I'm like, I'm in this pain. I got to do all this, walking again to get back, into my step. I got a goddamn catheter in my joint, and I got a,
Oh,
drain tube over
you
here,
definitely
and
you definitely feel I don't know if it's some type of guilt or you like, man, this is some BS. Why me? Well, I'm 37 years old. I got this. You get that moment of darkness
Yeah,
that you just sit in the bit. Like, I had visitors all the time, but sometimes at 2 o'clock in the morning, nobody in there but me. And I'm like,
yep,
I'm wide
yep.
awake. What the heck is going on? I'm 37 years old. I can't walk. I got a kid at home. My wife was, you all these things running through your mind, and you get the moment of, I would say, minor depression. But then all of a sudden, you like, snap out of it. Like, no, forget it. I'm gonna get out of this. I got a son. I got X, Y, Z. Going on. But you get that stuff for a moment. And I know a lot of
You
people that
do.
stay in that for a long time. But for me, it was
Right.
like, you know, I had to shake the mental demons out
Yeah,
because it's like
yeah,
them dark hospital room in the middle of the night. All you hear is beeping and people
yep,
screaming, or you're like, oh hell
yep,
no,
yep.
oh hell no. You know what I mean?
yeah,
It taps into your psyche like that, man.
Right.
And then Albert, that's funny that you say that because I remember sitting up in the middle of the night like, "Dang, go on, man." I wake up and I got all these IVs on me and everything in the middle. It's quiet, and you might hear some stuff like that. Then you might get a little bit of sleep, but they come wake you up because they got to get
Oh
that
yeah.
right. Take
IV, so they got to
labs.
get blood. they got to get labs and stuff like that. But you know, you do. I don't care who you are. You do go through a slight little depression, and you have to like talk to your inner self like, hey,
Hmm.
I'm okay, I'm gonna be all right. And you have to pump yourself up. There's nobody else
Right.
in there but
Right.
pumping yourself up, you know. And
Right.
I remember, like I said, when I had septic, man, I stayed in the hospital close to 70 days, and my room looked like I lived in there, man. I had magazines, I had all kinds of stuff, you know, just around. But and what's crazy is the first week, the first 2 weeks or so, people will come see you, and after that, you're like an afterthought. You know, everybody else is going on with their life, and you're stuck in this routine. You know, living in this hospital world, doing, you know,
Hmm.
going to get X-rays, coming back. Your food is coming here. You start being cool with the nurses and the, you know, because they
Right.
know you by name, and you
Right.
know,
Right.
even
You
if
know the
people come
shift. You done figured out the shifts and the days
you done
off.
Right.
figured out the shift. You've been there so long, man. You know the people who clean up, the dirt. You know the you know you
The
teasing with the
janitors
people
and
that
stuff. Oh
clean up
yeah,
the
those are
janitors.
those are the great
Yeah,
conversations right there because they want to take
yeah,
breaks too. They be sitting and
right.
talk forever. Yeah,
Yep.
those are yeah. I learned a long time ago that the nurses and the janitors are probably one of the top people that you need to be friendly to. Two reasons. Number one, a nurse will get to you before your doctor will.
I agree.
So if anything goes wrong, and some people they don't care, So if you acting a butt to them, and they're like, when they call you like, hey, so and so machine is beeping. Yeah, I know. I get to it later. That's because you didn't treat them like crap.
Right.
But they'll hear first beat and they hitting the button. If you cool like that, if you respectful and things like that, and the janitors, because those are the ones at the end of the day that's going to have to come clean up if you make a mess.
Right.
You want to make
Right.
sure that your room is clean
Hmm.
consistently. Your floors are mopped, your trash empty. All that stuff like that. And so I learned a long time ago. I need to be cool with these people because this is what's gonna make this a pleasant, a pleasant, non-pleasant, stay in the hospital. But my depression thing didn't really set in till my brain surgery. Because and I think it's different. Like you said, all our stories are different. Um, the depression thing didn't really sit too much in with me with my transplant because I knew it was coming. Number one, I knew what I was gonna have to deal with over time until I got to that point. My both my pediatric nephrologists consistently told me, hey, at one point you're gonna need a transplant. You're gonna have to go on dialysis. I heard that for 12 years, every month at my appointment. And it got to the point where I was like, bro, you tell me this one more time, and we gonna fight. But it helped me because I knew, once I got older, I was gonna get to the point where I was gonna have to deal with this deal with this procedure, go through XYZ things and blah, 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 blah. So when I got to it, I was just like, yeah, okay, well, I knew it was coming. So, might as well deal with it and keep on pushing. Where the why me came into place, like I said, was when I had my emergency brain surgery. That's when everything kind of went upside down for me because now I'm like, all I could think about was my grandfather. My grandfather had brain surgery as well later on in his life when he was older. And to watch him have to learn how to walk again, learn how to bathe himself again, learn how to eat again, trying to bring memories back, from certain places and things like that. That was just like when the nurse came in and said, you're gonna need emergency surgery, that was all that I thought about was him. What he had to
That's
go
all.
through.
That's all your recollection. That's what you had to go
That's
off
the
of. So
experience.
that's
Yeah.
the only thing you knew, right? Albert, let
So
me ask you this though, Albert. Albert, how long did it take you to get your strength back after the liver transplant? How long did you see yourself out?
Shoot. Let me. It's an interesting story I have with that. So remember, like I said, my son was 2 years old. So with me being out of the house for 2 months, he just done took over the house. Because my wife was back and forth to the hospital trying to keep him on the line, and he just, he's sleeping on my side of the bed. He done took over the house. So I get back home, I'm weak, and he just almost like a little bully. Bless his heart, he didn't know no better. Oh, daddy's weak, so I'm a I'm a I'm
I'll be
a
the man of the house.
I'm gonna be the man of the house. So one day he was acting up, and I was trying to get him. I'm stumbling, falling on the couch, and he almost standing back, looking like, "Ugh, get out of here, weakling," So one day, maybe 5 months, 4 months in, he was cutting up at the house. So he looking at me like, "What you gonna do?" And I grabbed him by the arm and I picked him up and lifted him in the air, like. And he looked. He said, "Oh my God, Daddy's back." He's like, "No, Daddy, no, no." And I said, "Oh yeah, boy, we about to tussle." So so I would say maybe about 4 or 5 months in is when I started kind of feel better. I was fortunate and blessed enough to be off work for about 9 months because working for the government, a lot of my fellow employees donated time so I could take time off and still get
Nice.
paid. So, I
Right.
had like 1,900 hours I could use. So I used that time until I got, strong enough to get back to work. And, I was still on dialysis at the time, but it was enough for me to feel strong enough to feel like to get back to normal, if you will. And that's what I did. Drove to work and sat around, and they took it easy on me for a good few months till they're like, "All right, now we're ready to get back to business." And I was proud to be able to healthy enough to do back my regular routine.
Was you on what kind of dialysis? Was you on dialysis after your liver transplant also?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Because I was so sick during the my hospital stay that I had no kidney issues prior to that, but because the liver was so bad and damaged, it started pulling down everything. Everything shut down
right,
essentially.
right.
And I was on life support. So, once I got once I got close to the transplant, my kidney shut down. And they put me on dialysis. You know, Again, I'm out of it, so I don't know what's going on. So I finally get the transplant, and I wake up, and I got this port sticking out my groin, one out of my chest. I was pulling stuff out, so they pulled one out, they put another one in, and so I was on dialysis for 11 months, and it was a blessing because I was like most people, I caught CMV. During my I think one of my hospital stays, and I had to go be hospitalized just for a few days, and I was at UCLA, and my port for my dialysis got blocked, so they had to put the little fluid in there to dissolve the fluid, and so the kidney doctor came in and was like, "Hey man, how dialysis go?" I said, "Oh, I missed it because the port is blocked." He said, "Really? Oh, your creatinine is going down." He said, "Oh, let's hold off next session." So he wrote down, "Hey, hold off tomorrow's session or whatever, day after tomorrow." All right, cool. He did it again. Everything going down. We're going from 6 down to 4 to 3. So after about a week, he's like, "Yo, all your kidneys needed was time off
Right.
from dialysis, and they was gonna wake up, man." He said, "If you wouldn't have been hospitalized, they would have just kept putting you on dialysis at the dialysis center because they're not doing any type of proactive work. They just trying to, put you in that chair, 3 times a
Right.
week,
Right.
Yeah.
So that was the point that I realized, like, because I was like Philip said, I was one of them. I was feeling good, and all of a sudden I happened to be hospitalized. I'm like, dang, here we go again. And then it turned out to be a blessing because without that stay, my kidneys never would have had time to recover and
Right.
wake up on themselves. So after that, that kind of changed the whole ball game because you guys know being off dialysis is like, a big burden
Yeah.
off your chest.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
You know,
Every
I,
night.
and I know Phil do it at the house every night. So we
Yeah.
gonna pray that he get his
Yes.
second kidney. But
Yeah. Yeah.
for me, like I said, it was doing it at home. I don't know if that was even an option because I have a kid at home. That got to be
Right.
sterile. I got dogs in the house. It's like it wasn't the ideal situation. So
Right.
I'm glad that worked out for me, and and you guys as well. When you had it, and Phil, he's used to it. Unfortunately, it's something that you hate to get used to, but it's like that's just a part of life for the
Right.
moment.
Right. Right. I'm glad your kidneys woke up, man. That's called For people who don't know, that's called acute. So that's not chronic kidney disease. That's
Right.
called acute. And that's a blessing right there that those kidneys woke up like that and everything. You probably start feeling better when that happened. Also, I know your
Right.
energy, your
Right.
hemoglobin, everything, just like
hmm
because
Yeah, it
that's
kind
what
of
really gonna help
it
you.
transferred a whole lot of stuff that was kind of
Yeah,
stable, was a little high. Everything kind of leveled off after that, and even some of the medication that they once they realized, even some of the medication I was taking was a little more damaging to the kidneys to others, so they
right.
switched some of that stuff too. And like you guys know, like I always mention, getting that right recipe was very
Yes,
important,
yes,
and to get where it minimizes kidney damage, but also helps your organ, and the
right,
anti-rejection rate.
right, right. What kind of anti-rejection medications are you on now?
My main ones are sirolimus and myfortic, and then I
Okay,
take ursodiol, which helps with the bile duct,
okay,
helps keep that flowing. And then everything else is sort of like a high blood pressure medicine to kind of,
okay.
as certain ones raise it, they help lower it down. So I'm probably on, let me see, 11 pills a day, maybe 7 in the morning and 4 in the
Okay.
evening or at night, going all the way down from 50 and 60 in the early
Yeah,
days.
I was gonna say that's considered, and of course you're eight years out. That's considered low dosage. You know what I'm
Right,
talking about
right.
from what we've experienced. So yeah, go ahead,
Yeah.
Phil.
No, hey, I was enjoying the information and conversation.
Well,
I
it,
don't
it was it was
interrupt Cook, so
it was crazy when I first was in the hospital. It wasn't as bad because the medicine, it would just seem like they would always bring something, taking blood pressure, medicine, whatever. But when I got home, and my wife would have to, I was doing medicine every 4 hours it seemed, and it was
Hmm.
like, girl, please don't come back with no medicine. She come with a little thing, and it had 5 or 6 pills in there. And then she'd go and then bring some liquid that's orange and yellow, and I had to take that. And I'm like, I'm barely eating, so why am
Right.
I taking so many pills? Then I had to watch my sodium, and I can't have pizza like I wanted to. It was just like I was
Yeah.
in a bad mood. I was in a bad mood. I was like, I'm like, oh my God, this is horrible. But we got through it, man. As they started dropping off things and my son got older, I started doing my own medication. I started opening up my diet to eat my regular stuff. It felt a lot better. So it's definitely a rough, 6 early months. As you guys all
Mhm.
know, while you're trying
Mhm.
to get adjusted
Mhm.
and everybody else adjusted around you, and it pays to have a support system, from
True.
family members to coworkers to church members,
Right.
whatever social groups you have. It's very important that, because sometimes, hey, I need somebody to go to the grocery store for me, or I need
Right.
some diapers, or I need
Right.
dog food, or I need
Right.
whatever. We had that. They was on top of it. People would literally drop off diapers and food to us because they know we couldn't go anywhere.
Right.
And it was definitely a blessing. Whether it was people from Faithful Central, my mom, my sisters, my niece and nephews, coworkers. It was a blessing to have that support system, because like you mentioned, for the cook is like, after a couple weeks, a lot of times folk will forget about you. You're like, hey man, my
Yeah.
need didn't disappear. I'm a little better, but and it's a
Right.
little
Right.
easier now that we 8 years in. You can have Amazon and all these places deliver groceries for you. But back then it was like, hey, I need a specific thing, and
right,
you would rather somebody, your mama, get it for you rather than some stranger on Uber Eats or whatever it may be.
Right.
Because she know what
Right.
she like. Because she can come in
Right.
the house for you. They're gonna drop it off at the porch. She's like, I can't lift
Right.
5 pounds. So
Right.
it's definitely a lot to learn, and I to say this, I hate that I had to go through it, but I know it was meant for me to go through it. If you understand what I'm saying.
Mhm.
If I had to do it over again, would I want to? I don't know, because that's tough. That's
It
a
is
tough.
tough.
That was a tough period of time to deal with, not only for myself, but the family and friends around me that had to deal with it as well. You know what I mean? And coming to UCLA and paying $14 a part. It was just a lot of
Yeah.
little
man.
things. You know what I'm
I'm
saying?
telling you.
Man,
My wife coming back and forth twice a day for 2 months,
Yeah.
paying
Yeah.
$14 at $28
Yeah.
a day, and
Yeah.
after the end, you on top of the medication and whatever bill you might get. We was blessed and fortunate that I got that bill came, it was not the bill, but the one that said estimated estimation of service. I opened that bad boy. It was like $3.5 million. I said, ooh.
Yeah,
I said,
yeah, I've
Yeah,
yes,
seen them.
man.
I've
and
seen
then it
them.
was like your portion is like zero because I had dual insurance. I'm like, oh, thank God. But I'm like,
Right,
Yeah,
to see everything that they charge you for,
yeah.
it's a packet like that. You're like,
right.
yeah,
Yes,
oh,
Every doctor
yes,
to come in and say hi to you is getting paid. So,
yeah,
right,
I
yeah,
mean, when you see the itemized bill, you're like, wow. Because I had to go to Johns Hopkins University from Columbus, Ohio. And so
mm,
I had to buy plane tickets and everything, So even my family, my support system who would come up to there, they would fly in and everything. And one thing I can say is the people who I see do the best is those with the best support system. And I can vouch that
right,
I had a wonderful one. It sounds like Albert, you had a great one, and I know
yeah.
Phil does as well. So these are the ones
But
that stay strong.
it was one thing that I always had a hard time describing was that place when we out. I guess we're unconscious or in the middle of a thought, or it's not like we're awake, but we're not asleep either. And I ran into a guy in the hallway one time. I was visiting the hospital to see the doctors, whatever. And he was like, "Hey, man, what kind of surgery you had?" I said, "Oh, I had a liver transplant 2 months ago." He said, "Oh, so you know about that place, huh?" And he looked at me, and the way he looked at me, I knew that he knew what I was talking about being in that special place. I don't like it to call it special, but it's just that kind of in between place where you go where all your thoughts are, I guess, if you want to call it. I don't want to put no type of religious connotation on it, but I don't know what it
I
was.
know what you're talking about. I exactly
Right.
know what you're
And
talking
he
about.
and he looked at me. He's like, "Yeah, I don't want to go back to that place." And I said, "You right. I sure don't because
Right,
right,
it's like
right,
your favorite thoughts and your worst nightmares join each other.
right.
And they're like, okay, what are we gonna do? It's almost like an Alice in Wonderland slash Willy Wonka colorful. I don't know what it was. It was just weird.
It's almost like you could go either way.
Right.
Like,
right.
Right.
do you want to live? Do you want to? I mean, because it's like that, and I
Yeah.
definitely understand, and I'm pretty sure Phil understands what we're
Oh,
talking
yeah,
about
and I
also.
definitely think
100.
you definitely have a choice at that,
Yeah.
if you will. I think I had a choice to make being there so often. Like, okay, you can come over here and hang out with us, or you can go over there. Not in a follow the light type of place, but almost like you control how this is going to end.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And
Right.
if you subside and give up, you're gonna go to the left or whatever way. If you want to keep going rolling, go to the right. You know what I mean? And
Right.
it's almost not
Right.
in a physical sense, but in the
Hmm.
mental thought process. Like you know,
I honestly, I don't want to get religious, but I feel it's more in the spiritual realm,
oh yeah,
where where you go, where's your heart taking you, and what,
hmm
and that goes back to what your, what's your purpose?
right,
If
right,
you have a higher purpose, because some people don't have a higher purpose, and they go, you know what,
right.
they choose other ways, and I'm not putting any bad or good on it, but it just goes like that. And sometimes people go, from the outside you can say, oh, that person gave up or whatever, but sometimes you don't understand what people go through when they're
Right,
going through these things, so
right.
you can't speak on that. We don't know
Correct.
what's best for you, can
Right.
only say what's best for you.
Hmm.
Yeah, I would call it more or less like a destination decision because it puts you in a place where, okay, I want you to choose. Are you gonna keep fighting and soar and get to where trying to go take care of your family and do things, or you gonna go ahead and make this turn over here and suffer, because you didn't fight, and and possibly, I mean, things can happen in some weird ways, but suffer and till you decide, till you go where you go or whatever.
Hmm.
It's a decision that you have to make. Some people have it, after transplant. Some people have it before. Some people have it during. They go out and they thinking.
I feel mine was during, like when the process of going through, getting the work up, the transfer in the hospital, all these things. And what again, I feel what you got to put forward if you want to stay on this earth, you have to put forward your will. What's your will? Do I have a wife, a kid, or my will to be in better for everybody else, or whatever it may be. And I feel there's no wrong or right in that situation.
And I can remember my day. I don't remember the date exactly, but it was a day I was recovering, but I had a bad day, in the hospital. And I remember a nurse came into my room, and I don't remember if I was awake or asleep, but I remember her coming into the room, and she had on the old school nurse outfit, the white dress with the
Hmm.
stockings and with the
And the
little
hat on.
the hat with the red cross on it. She was like,
Hmm.
hey Albert, what and she kind of ducked into the room, crazy. She was pregnant at the time, and I'm like, she's like, she grabbed me by my shirt and was like, Albert, do you want to live? And I'm like, yeah, of course I want to live. So my wife had a picture on the side of my bed. It was our goddaughter, my son, and my mom, and her on there. And she like, who are these people? And I was like, that's my son, that's my goddaughter, that's my mom, that's my wife. She like, do you want to live for them? I said, yes. So all of a sudden, she kind of pulled me up and kind of threw me down in the bed, and I woke up into the modern day time, I guess you will. And she was dressed in, regular smocks or her regular uniform. And she said, "Welcome back." And I said, "How's the baby?" And she said, "What?" I said, "How was the baby? You were pregnant." She like, "How do you know I'm pregnant?" She said, "I'm just 2 months pregnant. I just found out like last week that I was pregnant." But and then she like, I said, "I just had a
Wow.
dream and I saw you, you had a belly on you." She like,
Hmm.
and she started tearing up. Was like, "Really?" I said, "Yeah." It's like you shook me out of something just now. She's like, "No, I just came in here." But it was like you mentioned, she was like, she literally was tearing up in there. And I saw it was a little girl. She's like, "Well, I don't know what I'm gonna have yet." And I'm like, it's crazy how it was starting to scare me. Dealing with that previous dream I was having at the sun with my son, and I'm having this kind of experience with this lady. I said, "Lord, this medicine got me jacked."
I don't believe it's the medicine.
Yeah.
Right,
Honestly, I think it's our
right.
higher self.
Yeah, yeah,
Again, I've had these. I won't talk about them because it's about you right now. But
right,
you giving me chills going
right,
going
right.
here. These are the things I can talk to my wife about personally. I mean, but I'll just leave it at that. But I think it's our higher self talking to us
But
in these
and you like you
situations.
said, during those dark moments and certain moments, it's some of them things that I will be sleep in bed or I'll be driving and it'll come to me that I haven't even talked to nobody about just because it's hard to explain certain
Yes.
things. Like I don't know what it was. I can
Right.
describe it or maybe even draw it, but just to explain it to somebody that wasn't there and I was the only one there, it's like it's just pointless almost. And it's something that I cherish. But it's like it's weird to even talk about, because you
It's
might hear
really
me
weird.
talking. Right,
Yeah.
you be
It's
trying
really
to put
weird.
me in a
Yep.
psychological
Yes.
foundation, like, oh,
Yes.
this dude tripping, but I'm like, no, it really happened.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
For me, I think it happened a lot earlier than a lot of people would have, would mention. But I had that thought for me to make that decision when I was 4, when I, started going through everything. And I think it was probably the best time for me because, um, like I've said before, when I was 4, when I had to go to Children's Hospital, I was, I found out, my kidneys were bad and everything like that. I had a serious seizure in my grandparents' house, and they had to literally hold me to keep me from like going all over the place, basically, while I was, in my seizure. And at that time, when I was just basically like stuck in children's, I just remember thinking like, if it wasn't for them or if I'd have had it somewhere else, you know, would I even be here? And I know who my grandparents are. They were and still are my best friends. I mean, they're no longer here. They passed uh, 20, 22 years ago. So, but it was the main reason was them or why I kept fighting. because they were the ones, outside of, my mom, mother, family, my dad, and stuff like that, who took care of me. I stayed with them for a while, actually. Me and my pops, lived with them for a minute. And so, my grandfather, after all that stuff happened, he used to walk me around the corner to school, come pick me up and everything. Because literally, my elementary school was right around the corner. So, my grandmother, my grandfather were, my best friends. And I think if I wouldn't have had that realization and came up with that answer, there's no telling which way I would have went when they passed, because it was probably one of the worst days of my life, because they were no longer here. They didn't get to see me graduate high school, graduate college, what I'm doing now, and like I said, they were my best friends, period. We had a schedule that I did everything basically with them. When I wasn't with my mom, I was with them, and it was like from that point on, I really kind of lived for them, because like I said, you're in situations and even around people that care about you, sometimes things can go wrong. Decisions can be made that might not have been the best decision, but it was their love that kept me here, because they could have easily let me just sit there on the floor and do, nothing. But instead, my grandfather picked me up, he took me in the living room and held me and hugged me until I came out of it. So that, some people think that those situations like we just all mentioned aren't real or anything like that. No, they're very real. They're very real. They may not be necessarily a real in-person place, but they're a real vivid place. They're a real place for you to go in your mind to have thought process and things like that, and come up with your best solution to whatever problem. Because like Albert said in his, it's like, I just saw you with a full kid, in your stomach, so everything was the exact same thing in real life. Might have some minor tweaks,
right.
but it was the same place, same persons, still pregnant. Might not have been the month length, but she was still pregnant. So it's very real, and people need to learn how to pay attention to those situations. So
exactly. I'm done too. I won't say any more on that. When we talk personally, we can go into deeper talks about that. But I'm done. Albert, it was great talking to you, man.
Well, appreciate you guys, having me on, and shout out to all the caregivers out there, who helping
Yes.
fellas like us, the nurses and the
Yes.
parents and the wives and the
Doctor.
sons and
Hmm.
daughters, and even my two dogs. Bless them for being quiet for 2 hours because I'm in their room. But they stayed outside, and hopefully we get Phil better, because we got to play in San Diego next year at the transplant games, because last time he got sick and he was unable to finish out with us. But
well,
but
I'm getting old.
we okay. Well, I'll be 49, 50.
I'm getting old, man. I got bad hips, bad knees, and bad back and everything. I'm getting old
And
around here, man.
in the transplant game, that don't work because everybody got something going on.
Right,
Right.
exactly.
Right.
I just try to put a
Yeah,
little bit extra, like, I feel like I got
Mm.
a knife in my hip or something, like,
yeah,
Nah, but on dialysis or not, I'm still gonna be there, because at the end of the day, I believe it's about showing. Even though I don't have mine, I still believe in showing what that first one gave me.
right.
Because with that first one, I'm gonna be honest with you guys. When I was younger, I didn't think I was gonna make it past 18. I always told myself, if I don't get this transplant by the time I hit 18, I probably won't be here. It happened when I was 17.
Okay,
So, I believe in, still showing and advocating for what that first one gave me, because even though it only went 3 years, it gave me, you know, a lot more than those 3 years, because I
right,
could have been gone. I could have suffered in some kind of way or anything. but I'm still here. I may be on dialysis for the past 11 years, but I'm still here because of that time that kidney gave me. So, like I say, if I'm here, if I'm here, kidney or no kidney, I'm still going to be there. So, we ain't got to worry about that. So, but, to end, I always ask this question, man, what would you want the people watching now or in the future to take from your interview today?
Well, I mean, if you're any type of transplant recipient or potential recipient, be proactive in your health. Be your own advocate. Sometimes you got to do research on different methods because like all of us have learned that they're going to give you the generic cookie cutter medication or procedures, and sometimes that might not work for you. Everything is not. We're all not the same, and nobody's body reacts the same to it. So and also the most important thing, like we all discuss, is don't give up. You're gonna have some dark days. You're gonna have some pains. You're gonna have some deal with drama from the hospital, getting approval, going approval from the insurance company, approval from the psychological department. You're gonna have to talk to you're gonna have to talk to 4 or 5 people, just to get approved on top of your insurance. So, just keep pushing. Make the best impression you can, and do the best that you can. If they say don't smoke, don't smoke. If they say you can't drink, don't drink. All those things that give you the bonus points to get towards the goal of getting a transplant. And a lot of times you can't do nothing about it. Like mine was happened the day I was born. It didn't affect me till I was 37 years old. But luckily I had a good history of taking care of things, and blessed and fortunate enough to have everything line up. And the pre-existing conditions clause didn't affect me. So that's something you got to deal about. Get all that stuff out the way. All talk to your insurance company, get everything ironed out. So when it's time that you have everything there, and you won't have to rely on outsiders to determine your fate, because you have all your ducks lined up in a row. That's it.
Stay compliant. That's
right.
to make it a little bit easy. Some people are probably looking at you like, what was all them words you just used? So long story short, people stay compliant, man. Like you said, stay on top of your meds, stay on top of your insurance stuff, make sure everything is in place. So if you have to deal with that, you don't have to scrounge up and run and get this information. Everything. Put your stuff in place now. Like you said, be proactive.
Yeah, because when you're in the hospital and trying to get stuff done, it's kind of and you making phone calls, or you have your wife or your spouse make your phone call, and you need that information now, and somebody say they'll get back to you next week, it's gonna hurt your feelings, and it's gonna suck. And you want all that stuff ironed out with contact numbers and reference numbers and everything, so you can present that and say, "Here's everything you need right here."
Right, definitely. Well, Albert, again, I appreciate you 100%, man, for coming on and telling your story. It is very inspirational to tell the family I said hello.
Will do.
And so next week we'll be on with Shane Blanchard, 2-time kidney recipient, currently on dialysis looking for another kidney as well. So, we definitely look forward to hearing his story. And I will see you guys next Sunday, same time, same place. Have a great week.
Thank you, Albert. It was good talking to you, brother.
Take care, fellas. Have a good one.
All right. You too.